So with the Jay and Silent Bob reboot coming up, I think we need to talk about Kevin Smith, the endless source of both inspiration and frustration for millions of cult movie fans. Ever since he clawed his way onto the independent movie scene with Clerks, nearly trashing his credit in the process, he has produced a slew of media in the form of comic books, podcasts, his own store filled with licensed merchandise, and of course, several feature films. These films are mainly what we're going to be focusing on in this video. Particularly how, in recent years, Kevin Smith seems to be getting creatively lazier and lazier. His work a pale imitation of what it used to be. And although he seems like he's doing great in his personal life, congrats to him for losing all that weight, I can't help but feel like his movies have just gotten more and more cynical, the humor lazy, and pandering. I gotta get this off my chest, so today we're gonna talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of Kevin Smith. Okay, before we go any further, I just want to say that this good, bad, and ugly portion of the video is entirely given to opinion. Take everything with a grain of salt, and that being said, I expect a well-reasoned common thread with excellent spelling. The good Kevin Smith films are full of wordy, extensive dialogue that is as vulgar as it is verbose.
37. My girlfriend sucked 37 dicks.
In a row?
Let me ask you a question. Can men fuck each other?
What are you asking for my permission?
The characters speaking this dialogue are most often slackers, comic book nerds, stoners, or some combination of these archetypes. More often than not, they are dudes. They struggle over love, their lack of success, and their lack of success in love. They would be almost juvenile if it weren't for the thoughtful dialogue exploring the fluidity of sexuality and masculine identity under the pretense of dick jokes. Besides that, they're just plain funny and filled with novel scenarios executed with inspiration. Whether they are accidentally fucking dead bodies,
Well, I didn't just fuck myself!
naively trying to get into a relationship with a lesbian, closing their workplace to play some hockey on a roof, or just generally doing irresponsible things, Kevin Smith's characters are fascinating to watch. The so-called good Kevin Smith movies include stuff like Chasing Amy, Dogma, Zack and Miri Make a Porno, Clerks the animated series, I know that's not a movie, whatever, and Clerks 2. The so-called bad Kevin Smith movies have twice the vulgarity and almost none of the intellect. The balance of vulgarity versus wit in movies like Mallrats, Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, Jay and Silent Bob's super groovy cartoon movie is just completely out of whack. They're almost like what you might get if you asked someone who hated Clerks and Kevin Smith in general to write a Kevin Smith movie. This is just my opinion, but it feels like Smith leaned way too hard into the vulgarity he established in Clerks after he achieved mainstream success. Mallrats, the movie he made as a follow-up to Clerks, isn't necessarily a bad movie, but it definitely feels compromised. There are bright, vivid colors, an original studio-produced score, heavy comic book undertones, to the point that the gritty, troublemaking stoners from the last movie are now engaged in a cartoonish plot against a character who is essentially a Scooby-Doo villain. Mallrats has a lot of great qualities, but they're mostly overshadowed by an unshakable air of studio compromise, awkwardly dovetailing with Kevin Smith's indie style. I would say Mallrats is the start of the division of Kevin Smith movies into two distinct types, serious Kevin Smith and comic book Kevin Smith. Serious Kevin Smith has a bit more restraint with the vulgarity and tempers it with some thoughtful storytelling and interesting scenarios. Comic book Kevin Smith is all about the flashbang spectacle, the rapid-fire delivery of every dirty joke and subject you can think of. And so the thoughtful plotting goes off to the wayside in favor of this.
You and your sidekick are finally in the grasp of Cocksucker.
And then there's Cop Out. We don't talk about Cop Out. But for me, the worst part about comic book Kevin Smith is his apparent confusion over what his movies should be. It's almost like he gets more vulgar to appeal to a wider audience, but then lashes out at critics when they call him out for his hackneyed, unbalanced subject matter. Consider this scene in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back.
You know, a Jay and Silent Bob movie? Who would pay to see that?
Look, just because you address the main problem with your film within your film and make a joke about it, doesn't make the problem go away. In fact, this entire scene with Holden and Jay and Silent Bob works as a scathing indictment of Kevin Smith's critics. Sure, the abuse from the petty patrons of MoviePoopShoot.com is directed at Jay and Silent Bob, but the subtext is obvious. He's throwing shade on his haters. Which is fine in itself, but I think here the execution is painfully juvenile and petty and totally bereft of subtlety. I mean, he literally just has his main characters talk shit to trolls on the internet.
All you motherfuckers are gonna pay. You are the ones who are the ball lickers.
And so Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back is much more of like comic book Kevin Smith than serious indie Kevin Smith. I mean, it has a monkey sidekick, a full 5 minutes of jokes about Roadhead, a cameo from the Scooby-Doo gang, Ruh-Roh, and a plot point that literally hinges on a fart. I like Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. It's not a bad movie, again, like Mallrats, but it's flawed. It's a good example of Kevin Smith at his most crude. Now, Clerks was plenty crude on its own, but the vulgarity in Clerks was complemented by the deadpan delivery of the actors, the lo-fi camera work. The soundtrack comprised entirely of alternative indie rock songs. Smith had to keep his shots basic, film as much as he could at once, and was mostly restricted to one location. In other words, his boundaries and limitations on Clerks actually became advantages and contributed to the style and aesthetic of Clerks.
Of course not now! You're caught and now you're trying to snake out of doing what you wanted to do. Well, I won't let you. I want you to follow through on this just so you can find out what a fucking idiot you are. And when she dumps you again, and I promise you that, Dante, she will. When she dumps you again, I want to laugh at you right in your face just so you realize that that was what you gave up our relationship for.
Veronica, I love you.
Fuck you!
Now cut to Mallrats a year later with its bright comic book colors, over-the-top Jay and Silent Bob plot, and it's almost like it came from a completely different director. And it had trouble with critics because of that. It had troubles at the box office too, which may or may not have been related to the actual quality of the film, but we won't get into that right now. Moving on. Another movie that fits squarely into the bad category of Kevin Smith films is Jay and Silent Bob's super groovy cartoon movie. And it wasn't until this movie came out that I really started to have issues with the direction Kevin Smith was going with his career. Now, I'm just one man, I'm just one fan. Kevin Smith can do what he wants, and like I said, I'm happy that he seems happy in his life. He just put out this tweet recently about how he's doing and how he feels about the work he's been doing lately. In Jay and Silent Bob's super groovy cartoon movie, what can I really say about this movie other than it contains a character named Dickhead, a supervillain with a dick head for a head, and he explodes when he gets mad. Dickhead. So yeah, super groovy cartoon movies somehow manages to be both more juvenile and less intelligent than anything Kevin Smith has ever made. Until of course he made Yoga Hosers, which unfortunately is the sole inspiration for this video. There is but one movie in Kevin Smith's filmography I would call ugly, and that is goddamn Yoga Hosers. Everything about this movie is awful, starting with the title, followed by the acting, and one-upped still by the cringe-worthy attempts at portraying social media. It's all trash, and it gives me no joy to say that. Now, Tusk got me really excited for Kevin Smith again. I genuinely loved Tusk. He hadn't done much in a long time, and here comes this semi-comedic take on The Human Centipede, a comedy/body horror film from Kevin Smith. Well, sign me up, partner. It was the most daring and unique thing we had seen Kevin Smith do in a long time, and it was one of my favorite movies that year. And it seemed like he was so inspired after making Tusk, he planned a whole trilogy, the Canada trilogy. There was to be 3 parts. The first part, Tusk. The second part, Yoga Hosers. Wonder what that's about. And the third part, Moose Jaws, which is like Jaws but with a moose. That sounds fucking great. Not sure what's going on with Yoga Hosers, but I'm sure that'll be hilarious if it's anything like Tusk. See, but then he actually made Yoga Hosers, and everything kind of fell apart. After years of defending Kevin Smith, even through his more lowbrow, Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back, super groovy cartoon movie fun time, there is absolutely nothing defensible about this movie. The effects are straight up terrible, which is to be expected, but it's like they didn't even try to make them look good or convincing. The very central premise of the thing is even worse. Smith tries to defend this whole goddamn mess by saying he was trying trying to make a dumb movie, but that's exactly the problem. He's trying to make a so bad it's good movie on purpose, which is a very difficult thing to... Okay, no, fuck it. That's impossible to pull off. The reason movies like Plan 9 from Outer Space or The Room are so effective as trash cinema is because of their sincerity. And the disparity between what was intended and what was actually created creates a humorous dissonance that drives the appeal of trash cinema. Oh, hi, Mark. If the story is too self-aware, the premise is too ridiculous, you're not making trash cinema, you're just making trash. There's also the matter of Kevin Smith trying to pander to teenage girls. First it's a so bad it's good dumb movie on purpose, then he made this movie for teenage girls. Oh, interesting. Which is a bewildering statement when you consider A, the plot, which seems to be based on nothing more than the idea that it would be funny to combine the words bratwurst and Nazi. You get it, guys? Bratzy, like bratwurst and nuts. And also B, Kevin Smith is a man in his 40s, best known for making movies about lazy dudes and dick jokes. Sure, he writes decent female characters when he feels like it, but he really has no business making movies for teenage girls. I like to give the benefit of a doubt, but with Kevin Smith, it's hard at this point. I've defended him over and over again, but after Yoga Hosers, it feels like there's nothing left to defend. I'm not sure what Kevin's attitude towards critics is these days, but my guess is that he wouldn't be too thrilled with this point of view, just based on his reactions to critics in the past. But I don't criticize his work out of a need to hate, as do the patrons of MoviePoopShoot.com. I'm criticizing him now because I miss when Kevin Smith was a good filmmaker. Hell, a great filmmaker. I miss when his movies at least attempted some sense of thematic depth and maturity. And yes, his movies have always had some kind of juvenile humor at their core, but the play between that and the wit of the dialogue and the emotional arcs of the characters all made for some very entertaining cinema. Now it seems the wit is gone, and all that's left is the dick jokes. Dickhead! Far be it from me to judge Kevin Smith as a person. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm just saying that maybe he doesn't really want to be a filmmaker with the same passion that he used to. I know the guy has to pay the bills. I don't think he owes us anything either. He reserves the right to make whatever the hell he wants. But still, something just isn't right about his work in recent years. And are these really even the movies he wants to be making? 5 years ago, I doubt Kevin Smith ever thought he would do a remake or a reboot of Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. After Tusk, Smith became creatively revitalized. If you were following his social media in 2014, you would have seen that he planned an ambitious roster of movies that would have resurrected the View Askew-niverse, including a second Mallrats entitled Mall Brats, and Clerks 3, which I was very excited for. For weeks, Kevin Smith posted on Twitter about gathering the cast of Mallrats, clearly excited about going back to the well once more. But after a while, those posts stopped coming. And some months later, Kevin Smith announced that Clerks 3 wasn't getting made. He cited one actor's refusal to return as the nail in the coffin for Clerks 3. And this all brings us to the upcoming Jay and Silent Bob reboot, the premise of which is the exact opposite of promising. Of course, he's intending to make a spoof of remakes and reboots that satirizes and makes fun of the concept, which is an interesting and fine premise in itself. But if he handles reboots in this new movie the way he handled So Bad It's Good movies in Yoga Hosers, I'm not optimistic about it, to say the least. Nothing he's done recently gives me any hope for this new Jay and Silent Bob movie, except for the lone fact that it's technically going to be a View Askew-niverse movie. And I confess, I'm gonna watch it. I'll probably even laugh, but I don't think I'm gonna feel good about it. I think it's because Kevin Smith does not want to be making this particular movie. And this is just my opinion. I don't know this based on anything from the real world, but I think he would rather be doing something else. I think maybe he's just making it for money because it's about that time and he needs a good jolt to his bank account. Maybe it is more business than art. Who am I to say? But it doesn't feel like his heart is in it. I don't know. I could be wrong. Maybe he's exactly in the place he wants to be with his art, which is totally up to him, but we know we can do better. And even more than that, he knows he can do better. Regardless, like a true fan, I'll still be there. I'll still be watching, even if it feels like he's in his Phantom Menace phase. Dickhead! Thank you guys for sticking around for that one. Been meaning to do it for a while. No, definitely check out Jay and Silent Bob Reboot. I think it's gonna be good. It'll be funny. It'll make me laugh. Yeah.